Burkina Faso coup leaders to free Michel Kafando. Burkina Faso coup leaders will release the detained interim President Michel Kafando, a statement read on national television said. They have also agreed to the principle of dialogue as two West African presidents come to mediate. Mr. Kafando and the Prime Minister were detained by the Presidential Guard during a cabinet meeting on Wednesday. At least 3 people have died in protests after an ally of ex-President Blaise Compaoré was named leader. The U.S., France and the African Union have condemned the takeover in the former French colony. Elections were due to be held on October 11, nearly a year after a popular uprising forced Mr. Compaoré, the longtime ruler of the West African country, from power. The headquarters of Mr. Compaoré's Congress for Democracy and Progress (CDP) party were ransacked in Ouagadougou as news of the coup spread, the AFP news agency reports. The OAN regional body, the Economic Community of West African States (ECOWAS), has called for the immediate release of hostages referring to Mr. Kafando and interim Prime Minister Isaac Zida. Senegal's President Macky Sall, who is going to mediate along with Thomas Boniya of Benin, said he was heading to Ouagadougou in his role as the current. The elite Presidential Guard has been trained, in part, by the U.S. It is the most powerful armed group in Burkina Faso and often disrupted the activities of the transitional government as it tried to cling to the privileges it enjoyed under Mr. Compaoré's rule. It is seen to be close to him, and is not popular on the streets. So its seizure of power could be a recipe for serious violence. The transitional government might have made 2 mistakes, preventing politicians loyal to Mr. Compaoré from running in next month's elections and allowing the Reconciliation Commission, formed to heal wounds after the end of his authoritarian rule, to release the report calling for the Presidential Guard to be disbanded. Some argue that a newly elected president would have had greater legitimacy to take such action. Mr. Compaoré is currently in exile and was accused of committing widespread abuses, and trying to change the constitution to extend his term in office. Some of his key allies had been barred from contesting in the election. A statement issued by the coup leaders said the country would be led by Gen. Gilbert Diendéré, Mr. Compaoré's former chief of staff. In media interviews, he said he had no contact with Mr. Compaoré and would do everything to avoid violence that could plunge the country into chaos. The BBC Sékou Ouedraogo in Ouagadougou says the house belonged to the General Iñeko, about 100 kilometers 60 miles northwest of the capital, had been set alight. An earlier announcement on state television said wide-ranging talks would be held to form a new interim government that would organize peaceful and inclusive elections. Transitional Parliamentary Speaker Cherif Sy called for people to immediately rise up against the coup, and declared himself the leader.